Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so there you go. We've just heard the 4 latest current themes that the STB team are working on. One identity, payments, baggage, and open API. And of course, as you know, we've all been hearing, this is all about the innovative solutions to improve the end-to-end passenger experience. But here's the question. How do we know what the industry thinks about these themes, about the initiatives? And when I say industry, I'm talking about the entire industry. How do we know whether STB is tackling the right topics or tackling the right pain points? Plus, and very importantly, of course, what else can we do? Well, I'll tell you how we find that out. We put together a leadership panel session. That's what we do. We bring together as many of you as possible from across the entire industry to get a variety of perspectives. And that's exactly what we're going to do right now, ladies and gentlemen. This is the very first panel session for the World Passenger Symposium of this year. And the topic, right up there, innovating better together. Where are we heading? And is a program like STB, is it enough? So what is it that we want to hear from our panelists who are getting mic'd up? They're coming up on stage very shortly, and I'll introduce them to you, of course. But what do we want to hear from the panelists? Well, we want to hear things on certain positions. We want to hear from them, I should say, on certain positions. Like, has the game changed over the past few years? And these current initiatives, are they enough? And are they addressing the root cause of poor customer satisfaction performance? Actually, are the current initiatives, are they enough to prepare for the huge increase in passenger traffic in the coming decades? And I guess on that note too, we want to find out how the industry will foster innovation, and importantly, the disruptive change. We know that the disruptors are out there, ladies and gentlemen, and there's only more and more coming. We've heard a couple of the examples, or a few examples this morning from our speeches. Airbnb, I'll mention it again. We know what that's done to the hotel, to the accommodation arena. Here's this, I was doing some valuation, some numbers. You think of this, Airbnb doesn't own bricks or mortar, right? The company's valued at $25.5 billion. You know, the highest valued hotel group, it's the Hilton Group, which of course owns a lot of bricks and mortar. It's valued at $13.3 billion. These are all fascinating facts. Uber. We know the impact that Uber, incredible impact that Uber's had on ground transport or the taxi industry. And just in case you're wondering, Uber's valued at $62.5 billion. Doesn't own a car. The next closest transport company in terms of valuation I could find is, I think it's still the highest cap for an airline, Delta Airlines, which owns a lot of planes, valued at $34 billion. We're going to cover more in depth, I should say, the disruptors and the disruptive landscape. We're going to do that this afternoon in our executive panel sessions. But it does beg the question, doesn't it? It does beg the question, where is the disruptor in this industry? Where is the disruptor in the airline industry? Okay, so what do we got? We've got about an hour, just under an hour, I think now. So let's get cracking. I want to introduce our panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome up to stage. I hope he's mic'd up. Christoph, are you mic'd up? Christoph Mueller, ladies and gentlemen, Chief Transformation Officer, Emirates. Come on up, Christoph. Down the end there. Paul Griffiths, ladies and gentlemen, CEO, Dubai Airports. Amir, you're screwing up my order here. Gareth, are you mic'd up? Gareth Williams, ladies and gentlemen, CEO and co-founder of Skyscanner. Are you mic'd up? Yeah. You are? Okay, I'm sorry, I couldn't see it. There you go. Amir, you come on. Amir, you can come up. Amir Amidi, ladies and gentlemen, travel and hospitality practice, Plug and Play. And last but certainly not least, Caroline, I didn't mean to leave you standing there. Caroline Strachan, managing partner, Festive Road, ladies and gentlemen. So let me just get this straight. Christoph, Emirates, Airline, we know what, you know. They're trying hard, small regional carrier. So we know what you do. Paul, airport, we know what you do. Amir, plug and play. You're like, oh, so you've swapped around, haven't you? An innovation accelerator platform, right? Correct. You're described as an ultimate startup ecosystem. Your portfolio, and correct me if I'm wrong, here has raised over about $4 billion?
Correct.
Yeah, $4 billion. You provide corporations and investors access to these innovative startup ideas ranging from seed money to public companies. Got it right?
Part of what we do, that is correct.
Just part of what you do.
Yep.
Gareth, sorry, I've jumped over you. Gareth, Skyscanner, global travel search engine, for the want of a better term. You're a disruptor. You could, right? You're a disruptor.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. 60 million unique visits every single month.
Yeah.
Wow. Caroline.
Yes.
Business travel marketing and communications consultancy, Festive Road. But your background, you're the person that everybody in this room loves, right? Corporate travel.
Hopefully.
I mean, you rattled off some of the names that you used to work for. Big companies, right?
Yeah, I used to be the travel buyer for Cisco, Yahoo, AstraZeneca, and then more recently the head of consulting for Amex. So I'm the corporate travel representative on the panel.
Okay, so there we go. See, I just wanted to sort of make sure that you understood who we have on stage, ladies and gentlemen. And as I said, sort of very broad spectrum in the industry. Oh, I will say to all of you, of course, we're really anxious to hear what they have to say. But these are put together for all of you. So it's your industry. So you know what I'm going to say. I'm going to implore you to please take part when the time comes with questions. Preferably raise your arm. I'm going to be down amongst you all. Raise your arm. We'll get a microphone. I'll have a microphone. We'll get others. The other people in the room will have microphones. We'll get a microphone to you. But don't be shy. This is about a debate. We want to be controversial. Be critical. Please. And you can also use, do we have the slide? Can we put the slide up of, is that slide O? If you're too shy, I'm sure you're not, but if you're too shy and you want to write us a question, you can do so. Do we have a slide so they can see it? That'll come up in a minute. It'll just show you what you have to do for that. So, and we'll check those out during the session. Okay, so let's get started. Nobody's sitting in the rich seats at the front here. Yeah, we heard from Alexander this morning. So Tim also gave us their vision of what they think is the future. Because I'm just wondering, if the game has changed over the past few years, what in the world is coming next? And I'm wondering if you even know it. Can I just say, a couple of weeks ago on one of my shows, Dell, a part of Dell, did a global study, 16,000 companies around the world. 48% of CEOs said they don't know what their industry is going to look like in 3 years' time. 3 years' time, because of the digital age, the way everything's moving. So, Christoph, can I start with you? Just briefly, what's your vision over the next, let's say, I think 10 years is probably too much. I don't think we know. So 5 years?
I think we have always underestimated what's going to happen. When I bought my first book on Amazon.com, that was maybe 17 years ago. Today you can buy lawnmowers. Would we have thought that? Most probably not. No, we will be positively surprised. I think innovation will happen faster than our ability to implement it. That's what basically looking 10 years back has taken place. And I believe we really have to change the pace with which we implement available innovation. Obviously, the shortcoming is not technology. If we would just implement what's available today, it would be a quantum leap, I would say. To be honest, if we look in each other's face here, we are working on NDC since 5-6 years, I would guess. What is the percentage from the overall turnover of the airline business attributable to NDC? It's a very, very small one-digit number. And if I take that as a starting point and basically take that as the pace with which we implement NDC further on, or one order, we will never get there. We will really end up as being the slowest innovator in all industries.
Okay. Paul, you mentioned speed, because I want to talk about the speed. Or the rather...
It's not only about speed, it's also about whether this is really radical enough, you know. That is another word we have to discuss, because if it's always the smallest common denominator we are waiting for, we will get anywhere.
Okay, radical and speed. We'll come back to that. Paul, your vision, over the next few years?
Well, I think the first thing is, I think it's right to say, are we thinking big enough? Because if you look back in human history, look at those real big eureka moments. Fire, the wheel, the motor car. And those things are incredibly disruptive to the entire life on the planet, to every human being. And I think one of the biggest things is look at the composition of this panel. You know, Christoph and myself are probably the only two dinosaurs on this panel that represent the legacy of the industry. And, you know, would we have had a panel with these disruptors sitting next to us just a couple of years ago? No way. We wouldn't have had that. So, you know, the vision that Elon Musk has for reusable space travel and the idea of, you know, harvesting and storing energy from the sun, so all of our homes will be powered from, you know, renewable sources, and we'll be driving around in electric cars. Those are the big moves. And my big question is, are we really thinking about what our consumers are going to drive? Because, you know, I don't think technological change is in the back room and in the server room in the big corporate headquarters. Technological change is in the pockets of our consumers. Those are the people that are driving change. And if we're too slow, they will take the lead. You know, our entire IT information delivery platform is now being written by two guys in Romania. They're not being written by the SAPs or the IBMs of this world. It's that sort of change that people, through the commoditization of technology, is now capable of being driven by the consumer. This is why all these opportunities for Uber and Airbnb and Skyscanner, of which I'm a devotee, you know, those are being driven by putting things into the consumer's hands. And I don't think we've worked out as an industry what that big eureka moment needs to be. And that is surely making the entire travel experience a pleasure and a commodity. You know, we've talked about commoditization. All of the initiatives are making data and processes simpler and getting across. But, you know, we are a very silo-driven industry. We have a load of pillars which are impenetrable when you try and move across them laterally. I've always said it's a bit like pushing a shopping trolley across a load of railway lines as the customer experience in our industry. And until we think big and have that, you know, let's put an American on the moon within the next decade, President Kennedy moment, unless we actually describe what we think the ultimate consumer proposition is going to be, we're not going to move there by increments, in my view.
Gareth, you're in the middle of the digital world, if you will. Does Paul, has he got a point there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a huge amount of exciting things coming, turning intent in the context of a mobile device into an itinerary rather than 1,000 search results. But I think there's also the problem of how do you keep pace. I mean, it seems to me that a bit like with income inequality, you're ending up with consumer software companies eating the world. And their job, and indeed our job, is to do the best job in building software that we possibly can. And I think at its core, the way that I would look at it is, in the past, airlines have said, well, websites come along, website is first party, everything else is third party. And then apps came along, so build apps. But what does it mean when someone's speaking into Amazon Alexa? Is that first party or third party? And I think at its core, NDC is a really important part, which is we control what happens at the time of booking. And then everything else is a shade of grey in terms of how first party, third party is. And if the investments of companies that are not primarily software companies are focused on that, then there is a chance to be in control of which marketplaces to support and which to not.
Amir, is the industry, from what you saw, just those initiatives, Is that the right steps forward? Or that's not more, as Christoph said, that's not radical enough. IATA and the think tank teams, STB, they've got to go beyond that.
No, I definitely think the areas these folks in the room are focused on are the right areas. But funny enough, when I was just listening to the presentations and trying to come up with some parallels to Silicon Valley and the airline world, I think people sitting in this room are fortunate enough to be part of an industry that can afford to lose money year after year and still stay in business. And in Silicon Valley, we have a number of startups that have multi-billion-dollar valuations, but they don't make a single penny. They're investing for the future, and eventually they come up with a model that works and end up making money. Facebook being a good example. So going back to your original question, as far as what the future looks like, I'm an outsider, so I can't in any shape or form say I'm an expert when it comes to...
but what would you like as a passenger though, right?
I'm a passenger. I actually flew here last night, a bit jet lagged, but as it was mentioned earlier, I don't think the passenger experience has been transformed over the past 15, 20 years. You could say the airport experience to a certain extent maybe improved. In certain cases in the US, it actually went backwards due to security concerns. Getting on a plane is always not a pleasant experience. Going on a long-haul flight for 15 hours, I believe the number one utility of the in-flight entertainment systems is the maps and a couple of movies. And when you're sitting in an airplane cabin, I think you have the most engaged audience, for 10, 15 hours. Is enough being done to actually provide a more engaging experience for the passengers. But going back to your original question, as far as what we see happening, because we're sitting in a unique position, we're not just focused on travel and hospitality, we're also focused on brand and retail, IoT, fintech. And the area that we're most excited about is personalization. And that's not unique to travel or aviation. We think with the enhancement in machine learning, AI, data analytics, there's a lot of room for folks sitting in this room to be able to provide a more personal service for the passenger. And all the airlines sitting in this room are sitting on a gold mine, and those are the historical data you have on your passengers. And you can tell a lot about what people are going to do in the future by looking at what they've done in the past. And from where we're sitting, we don't see that actually being utilized as it has been across other industries. And so that is a huge area for us that we're focused on. And I don't think the airlines themselves necessarily can be the right party to analyze the data and make sense of it and provide a more personalized service. I think it has to be third parties who are experts in that field that help the airlines out.
Okay, and I'll come back to that. Two things I want to come back to. What it is, because he's your worst nightmare, right? He doesn't like flying. He thinks nothing's changed on board, the whole process. I want to find out what you would like to see or experience on a 10, 15-hour flight. But Caroline, just briefly as well, what you've heard so far, your vision over the next few years? Before we...
So at Festive Road, we spend a lot of time with passengers and travel buyers. So what's lovely about this event is that what I'm hearing so far is the passenger is front and centre. Lots of airline and trade events I spend time at, no one spends time talking about the traveller, which is a real shame. I would love to see this industry put the traveller and the passenger at the heart of everything that we do, and in fact probably go beyond calling them a passenger, they're a consumer. And I think we need to start understanding the consumer, their behaviours, and then being able to plan and delight them. We don't do that today. And if I spend time with Gen Y passengers or travel buyers, it's very clear. They say, know me, be where I am, and tell me what I want to hear. And if you think of that in an airline context, the know me is exactly what you've just said. You know all the flights that I've been on. And I had a wonderful experience recently where a purser greeted me by name and had remembered me from a previous flight before, right? But that was him personally. The data sits within that airline to make that experience realised. So know me, know my patterns, know what I like, know what I dislike. Be where I am. So I'm on Facebook Messenger, I'm on WhatsApp. If I'm in China, I'm in WeChat. they're the platforms. I don't want to come onto brand.com to make an airline reservation. I don't want to go to different places in the future. I think we will have to go to where the consumer is. And then tell me what I want. I don't want to spend a whole load of time searching, which I think is where Skyscanner have done beautifully. They've consolidated lots of different results and put them all together in one place. So that's where I would love to see the industry go in the next few years.
Are we seeing signs, Christoph, that we're heading that way, or not? We're not.
I couldn't agree more. I would go even further and say the travel experience of the future will be an a la carte experience from the passenger. And I compare it always with an iPhone or an iPad, none of which are the same 24 hours after they have been bought. They are individualized by a certain constellation of apps, music, pictures, you know, and that is basically my vision going forward, that the passenger is able to really select fast-tech security lounge access and many, many things more. For most passengers, a 15-hour long-haul flight is a very boring experience. So I think people have just, you know, have something meaningful to do, and it's not finished with merchandising and, you know, selling duty-free stuff, you know. It goes that you can do the online banking you usually do at home to fill the time meaningful. And this is all about the individualization. I believe there is no technological barrier to make that happen. Tour operators do that. It goes even so far that the flight for a tour operator is an ancillary revenue. You know, it's basically just turning the thing on the head. We have to make that happen, but we also have to deliver it. That means the production machine of an airline has to be reviewed, and when outsourcing was basically the flavor of the day many, many years ago, I could perfectly see that there is a new wave of vertical integration of travel services, really door-to-door travel services, not dissimilar to what Amazon shows in launching their own physical distribution service. So I believe that is the whole package going forward, but at the end of the day, the travel experience is not dissimilar of what you do with your iPhone. You individualize according to your own needs, and none of which will be the same, because the possibility of constellations is infinite. And that will make certain elements of our current added value chain simply redundant. Because if you have an infinite number of product combinations, you have an infinite number of prices, and you cannot file them any longer. So, for example, price filing mechanism will just disappear in that world.
Can I just build on that?
Yeah.
That passenger experience you were just explaining there about that 10, 12, 16 hours. I think something that we've really noticed is, you know, the office no longer has any walls. So you need to be able to work anywhere. There's people working in the room right now, taking their notes. You're at an airport, you're working. You're on board, you're working. You're in a traditional office space, you're working. So there are going to be some passengers who want to be able to work on board. There are others, and I observe, if ever you're flying with me, if I'm staring at you, I'm not being creepy. I'm just observing what passengers are doing, because I love seeing how people are using that space. And I did it on my flight in yesterday, and you know, across the top of the A380, most people watching films. So is that because they're watching films because they've got on board and they've gone, at last, some downtime? Is it? Or is it not? Who knows? So I feel as though we've almost assumed what people want in that space without truly understanding what they want in that space. So at my days at Yahoo, and I'm sure you must see this in the Silicon Valley a lot, that we used to have eye tracking devices and heart monitors on people so that we could see when different images came up, whether that excited people or frustrated them, and we could see where their eyes were going on the screen. How much of that happens in the airline industry? I don't know. How do we get to the point where we truly understand how the passenger wants to use that space? Because I want to encapsulate myself and close the world around me and just have quiet time. The next person wants to be the most productive person. How do we do that?
Yeah, because I'm wondering, and I'm noticing the questions are coming up, thank you, and we'll get to those in a minute, but like Amir, what is it? I actually enjoy a long haul. I do a lot of long haul flying, especially if I'm up front. I eat, drink, watch movies, relax. I mean, what do you want to do?
You know, that is something that I don't personally have an answer to, but, you know, some thoughts we've had brought to us by startups is, if you know a passenger is going from San Francisco to Dubai, and you know that passenger is traveling for business or leisure, depending on the time of travel and if there's conferences going on, what kind of content could you serve up that passenger on that flight that would be relevant for them? If it's a leisure travel, perhaps they've done their research already, but have they made decisions, pulled the trigger on the activities they want to have? Why not be able to put those activities in front of them? Relevant content based on the passenger's travel on that flight. So that could be an example. But again, we're not experts in what needs to happen. We just try to find the best of the breed technologies out there from folks who understand the industry better than us, and try to bring those folks to the airlines to integrate those technologies in their existing systems.
But I wonder if the industry's between a rock and a hard place. I mean, because we keep saying meet the passenger demand. We don't know what we're going to want in, before 2007 and little old Apple brought out the smartphone, we didn't know that was going to change, basically changes our life, right? If you leave that behind, you feel like you've left your right arm. It's been cut off. So
the thing is, you see, what's really happened over time is all of the technology and the processes that have involved in travel have mostly served the corporation. How do we do it better? How do we do it cheaper? The outsource model that Christoph was talking about, it's all been very corporate-centric behavior. Very little investment has been done in the travel industry, I would suggest, to try and understand and provide for the individual needs of the customer. But in other industries, that's actually the whole DNA. You talk about Steve Jobs and Apple. Very, very clever technical innovation, but the vision behind it was not just create a better smartphone than the other guy. It was, how do we get this device to be so consumer-oriented that it will change people's lives? We've not done that in travel, but we have an immense opportunity to do so, but not in the way we're structured at the moment, because what I think we're looking at now is a complete different structure of an industry that stands hand in hand with the consumer across the entire travel journey, instead of this sort of bumpy silo view of life.
My experience of flying into Dubai was one of amazement. I could do pretty much anything I wanted to do at home, and that was a mixture of work and downtime, and I continue to be amazed at that. But I think one of the lessons of Salesforce, people think it was about a cloud-based company. One of the main lessons was that they built software for the person that used it. And I think that's the lesson that the iPhone teaches what's going to happen in the future to the business and leisure customer. Because actually, the person who travels, as Caroline was saying, it's going to do a mixture of work and leisure at any point. And I think BlackBerry came to grief because it said, we are about your life for telephonic needs when you're at work. And I think companies, hopefully us, but companies that say, I'm about all your travel, will then achieve that. And I think from an airline and airport perspective, there's a similar lesson from Salesforce, which is, in the end, the traveler will influence the decision.
Okay, I want to ask this top question, but before I do that, because we've got to touch on the theme. It was coming off the back of these 4 STB initiatives. Christoph, you mentioned the word radical, maybe not about these, but just maybe we need to think more outside the box. So can I ask you, Caroline, do you think those initiatives are enough, or they're not radical enough? We need to do more with what we're hearing up there.
So, was it coming to me or to...
I asked you, but no, sorry, but did you, because you actually said...
Let me come back to that radical approach. No, I believe we have always 2 choices to change our industry. If we talk about industry and IATA and so on and so forth, we can do it in an evolutionary way, or we can do it a little bit more revolutionary. And I believe when it comes to safety, we have proven in the last decades really that we are able to move extremely swiftly and to really enforce implementation of certain new standards. If we do it evolutionary, then it's a kind of basic democratic process, which the entire lapse time is determined from the slowest element. And I believe if we all believe that we serve the customer better in implementing certain things faster as an industry, we are well advised to consider them. And the way we got rid of the paper ticket, I believe, was a good example for, let's say, a middle ground solution. And again, I'm very worried that approximately 1% of global revenues in the airline business are coming now through NDC. That's not enough. If that trajectory is kept, we will not implement one order early enough really to satisfy the consumer's needs. And maybe to continue on, I do not think that we should try to predict the customer's needs from all the data we have available, because I'm in fact myself 3 customers in one. My travel patterns from Monday to Friday are completely different as opposed to a quick weekend trip to visit my love.
You could tell that in the data though.
But yes, I can tell that in the data, but I go even further and say, you know, why should the customer not decide on the leg from New York to Dubai what he wants to do on the second leg from Dubai to Melbourne, what he wants to eat, whether he wants to sleep, you know, short notice on the mobile phone. By the way, I believe the mobile phone or the smartphone is the leading technology in the next 5 to 10 years. Booking via a website in 10 years will be stone age. My kids already look now at me a little bit strange when I unpack my laptop computer. So we have to cater for the travel needs of the next generation. And that's where I would go even further and say, let's not guesswork what the customer wants on the next leg, on the next flight. Let's enable the customer to tell us. That will be for our benefit, because we will have simply less waste on board if everybody can pre-order the meal or select from the menu fish or chicken or whatsoever. So I believe it all makes sense to basically declare the direct dialogue with our end consumer really the main enabler for change.
Yeah, and if I can just add to that.
Yeah.
Point I was trying to make, again, it's not unique to the airline industry, it's across all industries. It's not so much to guess what the customer wants, but use the actual historical data as well as data that exists out there on individuals to be able to predict with certain confidence, 80%, 90% confidence, what Amir is going to do. When it comes to his business travel based on historical patterns or my leisure travel. So actually the data part of the equation takes a lot of the guesswork out. At the end of the day, I think people are we're habitual beings, and a lot of the existing data could be used to predict with 90% or 80% confidence what the travel patterns are going to be for a certain individual by looking at historical data.
Data. Can we bring the Slido up screen? What emerging technologies will enable you, your industry, to innovate, to be innovative faster?
Well, I think the thing is that we haven't really cracked what this consumer revolution is all about in our industry, in my opinion. You know, you look at other industries and see how that psychology of engagement with the customer has completely changed, you know. When you go to Paris, you look in a jewelry shop window, and that consumer experience starts with a security guy looking you up and down to see whether he thinks you're good enough to press that button to allow you into the store. How that changes your engagement with that brand. You know, I'm now privileged enough to walk into this store and sit down and look at the wonderful range of products. Swatch, 24,000 different ways to buy a swatch. You know, a relatively inexpensive purchase. But how does that feel about the level of personalization and the relationship I can have with that brand? BMW, 4.5 million cars, and they claim that every single car in some respect is different from all the others. Those companies have really said the way to engage with the consumer is to offer them the ultimate customization experience. You know, we've not gone beyond chicken or beef, really. Or, you know, and we're not really giving people the choice of what they want for Brexit. I mean, sorry, I said Brexit, I meant Brexit, sorry, I meant breakfast, not Brexit. Terribly sorry. Yeah.
You haven't seen my video, I hope. Okay, let me ask you this, because they're coming in thick and fast. So, here, can you see them there as well?
Yeah.
Or not? Yeah. Third one down. One platform for single customer view is imperative. Obviously, we've been saying. What do you advise the airports and airlines with massively siloed, dated sources obsessed with legacy? Yeah.
Start with make your timetables available under an open API. Startups all around the world are forming, going, hang on, there's no way to get data. Timetable, you know, there's pricing has cost implications, etc. But where you fly and what the timetables are. And by the way, that it's essentially a calendar item with recurrence is what schedules are. That would be a great place to start with very little cost.
The other thing we're looking at is, you know, for the average leisure traveler, I don't know what the stats are, you probably know better, but I think the average leisure traveler today goes across 13 or 14 different websites before they make that first booking. Chances are what they're seeing across all those websites are not that different, but they're not finding everything they need on one site, if you will. So for airlines, Skyscanner; for hotels, maybe it's Expedia or Booking. And all those services do a good job of what they're doing for that particular part of the travel journey, but there is no comprehensive place that you can go with confidence. No, number one, you're getting the best deal. Number two, you're getting everything you need under one platform. And hopefully, number three, your data is being collected the right way, and next time you go back to that site, you're going to be offered things that you actually are looking for. So the next wave that we see is all these silos that provide a portion of the services someone needs for their travel or journey, hopefully to be done under one umbrella. And you're seeing that happen through sites like Expedia, Booking. I think even Skyscanner is doing hotels now. But we think there's a lot of room for improvement in that regard, having a one-stop shop and people being able to shop with confidence on that one-stop shop.
Christoph, you see the fourth question on the screen? Oh, it's gone, has it? Oh, no, where? Can we get that back?
The end-to-end...
Endies.
Yeah, well, what can I say? Emirates certainly has set the standards with the limousine service to have a really door-to-door experience, but we have more in the pipeline. I believe to think about air travel or aviation is most probably not the right scope for us going forward, but we would much see us more as a travel manager, end-to-end. And again, you know, you can see that people's needs, being business travelers, are completely different to a family of 5 going to the Galapagos Islands. You know, gives you the full range of what you can cover in your value chain. But clearly, I think that is the right way of looking at things. The air transportation from A to B is certainly not wide enough to give full customer satisfaction.
I think this is where the travel agent, the travel management companies have a role to play. So in the work that I do with the NDC team, they've done a really good job of engaging that group. And when you hear them, that's completely where they see the opportunity. So they see airlines wanting to disintermediate. They see the likes of Lufthansa making the moves that they've made, and that threatens their role. But actually the conversation has moved beyond that, very quickly got beyond threat to opportunity of the passenger wants that door-to-door experience. Actually, they're in the prime place to be able to create that door-to-door experience. So I think I was reading a report yesterday over the future of distribution. It was the London School of Economics report that was published. And it was a really interesting piece in there about, will the future disruptors come from legacy players, so maybe an airline being a legacy player, who's going to co-create with a startup or an agent to co-create a new experience. So maybe there's going to be a co-creation between TMC and airline to create that door-to-door experience with everything the passenger needs along the way.
Is it going to take, Paul keeps talking about the dinosaur, right? The industry is the dinosaur, they're not moving on, chicken beef.
He's talking about me.
Yeah. But it appears, and maybe you also will have something to say about this, but it appears that they're not going to do it, are they? it's going to take an outsider, isn't it?
I think it's one of the problems is if you have a customer, say a family going on a summer holiday and they fly once a year, then under those circumstances, you're going to choose to spend on advertising. And if you're spending a lot of money on advertising, you're not spending that on technology. So I think one of the challenges, and you mentioned the travel agency service providing that. I mean, people think about a holiday for up to 6 months. And if you can provide value during that time, then you can spend more in investing in technology and providing a useful tool that gains loyalty and frequent usage, and less money in advertising to kind of get replacement customers back. And I think that's one of the biggest differences between the taxi sector and the airline sector is the frequency of engagement. There's a guy did a buses app in Edinburgh where we started, and I think he's got more installs in Edinburgh than we have as a company of 800 people. And it's because of that daily frequency around buses. So we need to build that frequency into the experience, I think.
I think if I can add to that, the way I think of mainly business travel, so the frequent travellers, is as an industry we're very much focused on the point of sale, and some areas of the airlines are focused on point of experience. So obviously the airports have, and the experience folk in the airlines are focused on that. But if you look at the point of sale and the point of experience, there's this massive gap in between. So you book your ticket 3 months ahead, you never hear from the airline again until they maybe send you a prompt 24 hours to check in. There's this wonderful gap, an opportunity to have this ongoing conversation with that traveller, to build that relationship with them, to make that experience of when they get on board. And then the point of experience, then of course they come home again, and then creating that lifetime value of that customer to create that ongoing experience. I follow the retail industry because I think the airline industry has got so much to learn from the retail space. They're doing that, starting to do that really well now. So I think one of the questions was, who do we go to? Who can we look to help us with this? I certainly think some of the retailers actually could really help us. And I don't just mean about retailing in the sense that we speak about it at the point of sale and differentiation and personalisation at the point of sale. I mean throughout the whole lifetime value journey.
How far can airlines take retailing? How far do you think they can go?
Well, I think that point of sale versus point of experience I spoke about is just going to hopefully all blend into one, that there's this ongoing experience. So if you think of upgrades as an example, I've always been super surprised that over the years it's taken to now to start selling an upgrade at the gate. So you try and sell me an upgrade 3 months in advance and it's double the cost. At the point of sale, you're completely forgetting the benefit of that upgrade. You're sat at your desk at home, you're on your sofa in the lounge, wherever you are, you're forgetting how much you really want that upgrade. And then it gets to a week before you're starting to think about the trip. It starts to get a bit more interesting. 24 hours, of course, a lot of carriers are now probably pushing you the opportunity to upgrade. It's maybe interesting, depends what the cost is. It's when you get into the airport that starts to become a really interesting upgrade. So you're at the gate and all of a sudden there's a school trip on board, and you're thinking, I'm on 28E and I'm going to be surrounded by a whole bunch of children.
Get me out of here.
I love children, I have children, but I'm going to be surrounded by a whole bunch of them. That's a really wonderful time to upgrade on board. But I also, when I said about I stalk people and I look at things on board, you look at the number of seats that sometimes sit empty in business or premium economy. Why aren't you upselling on board? So I heard an announcement the other day that said, can you please stop sitting in the premium economy seats? They're not there for you. I mean, it was quite an abrupt announcement. Like, turn that around. Turn that into an upsell. You're not happy with your economy seat? Come pay us $100.
What airline was that, by the way?
I'll tell him in the coffee break. He's here.
Christoph, what do you say to that? That's
The retailing opportunities or merchandising opportunities are literally endless. You have a 24-hour flight from the UK to Australia. Just the time available will enable that. But again, the combination is endless. And you mentioned BMW, you mentioned the individualized car. Maybe some of you have seen one of these modern car configurators, and people sit at home, researchers found out, and they have as much fun to configure their car than finally driving it after 9 months when it is delivered. And they do it every night, you know, and change the color and so on and so forth. That is basically what I see going forward, that we make flying exciting again. You know, that, you know, flying as such is an adventure, right? And that people configure their trip if they go once a year for a very, you know, important vacation.
You could configure that trip in the car.
You, of course.
Take it, but that will require the
You
APIs.
can change it to the very last moment,
think-
but you know, make people excited about this thing and makes them creative what they can do on board. Let's plan their time productively, and you know, if they want to change, short notice, they can change.
But that has to start with the commoditization, as you're saying, the commoditization of all the component parts of travel that are universally available on a platform that the consumer will trust. And, you know, interesting point about advertising and technology.
So I think it's standards rather than commoditization.
Well, yes, it is. But I think the thing is, you know, if you look at what confuses consumers when they're using technology, it is the fact that, do I actually trust that I'm getting unbiased information about this purchase choice I'm about to make, or do I want to go to a source that I can trust? You know, Airbnb, I think, has been an aggregator of product to create a situation where, you know, it is a level playing field. You've done great strides in that area as well amongst airline schedules, you know, and there are lots of places. I mean, Uber has been successful because it has done two major things. It has common rated, if you like, all the excess capacity that taxi systems have and brought that price advantage to the consumer together with a guarantee of quality. Now, there must be opportunities to engage the consumer like that, and I think technology and advertising will absolutely merge. Talk to any advertising executive, you know, they're bothered about, you know, the way that technology will do away the need for any form of print or traditional advertising. And, you know, when you go onto Google or you're on eBay and suddenly all those ads appear, how do you know I was looking at garden furniture or golf clubs or lawn mowers the other day? You know, it's sort of subliminal, and technology will change the face of that consumer interaction. You know, we won't be looking at traditional advertising. And the whole commoditization of the component parts of travel will make this mass customization possible. It's starting to creep in, but it really does require everyone to participate in that base level commoditization and standards of the component parts.
Sorry, Karen, no, please.
There's an interesting point to add around trust. So where I think Amazon have been very successful, they had to spend billions on advertising over the years to create their position. They now just this year have tipped over the 60% mark where the 60% of their transactions are going directly to the app, so they're now not having to buy traffic. That's because we now trust Amazon. But interestingly, they took that a step further and said, and listened to their data, understood their data, and said, how are our consumers behaving differently now? So they come to the app directly, then they sort by prime, so how quickly can I get what I need? Then they sort by reviews, how great is it, how have other people reviewed it, and then it's by price. Apply that into the airspace. Imagine a time where you're no longer buying air seat based on the lowest price. That's the biggest piece for me, that's this biggest barrier that exists. And certainly the airlines that we work with get so frustrated that they have this amazing product and yet they're being compared with maybe a sub-product at the same price. So that links me into the single view. There's a great question there about the one platform for the single customer view. I think that's where Google, Facebook, WhatsApp, all of those guys have done really well at just taking unstructured and structured data and really learning from it and helping it to drive their business model. So is there going to become a point where there is a difference between getting some standard communication platform in place, like the lady in that corner was talking about, and that's going to help the whole industry move on, and then everything that goes on top of that becomes competitive advantage, but you're going to have to let something go to be able to drive the whole industry forward.
Paul and Christoph, so do you think you can do it, though? Do you think it's going to happen? Can you innovate faster?
We have to. There is no choice, and so Tim mentioned it this morning. I mean, we are a commercially driven company through and through, but still, we are a subset of the business model Dubai. And Dubai, being as what is for me the most fascinating innovation, is this business model, because it offers really everything we were talking about. It offers really all possibilities of enjoyment of business in all possible combinations. And you know, we have to be a showcase, we have to be an ambassador wherever we fly for the business model Dubai, and the innovation here is going at high pace. We are, you know, delighted to mirror image that basically in our own behavior. So we have to innovate faster, and we have to innovate also continuously. The language we applied all morning with standards and recommended you know, behaviors and so on and so forth always suggests that there will be a Mark 5 or Mark 6 or Mark 7 release of the new world. It ain't gonna happen. We will embark on a continuous change process, and we better develop platforms, technology platforms, which are open to a permanent innovation. You know, it's not that one app released yesterday will be with us for longer than a year. Then it will be replaced by something else.
But Paul,
That's a very important mindset for us in the industry, that there is no standstill any longer.
See, Christoph is saying we have to. But we've heard that in the past before in this industry. So what do you, will you be able to?
I don't think we'll really crack this unless we take a leaf out of some of the new industries that are springing up and become genuinely consumer and customer-centric. Unless we actually embrace what that is and put the customer at the heart of what we do and look at this mass customization model and the technology changes that it will drive in the future, I don't think we're very structured systems and access that we give them today.
Are there any questions? Or anybody around me? Not on that side of the room. No, I'm joking. Any questions? I know we've got some more on the screen.
Perhaps just add whilst
Go.
finding someone. I think airlines have probably an understandable reluctance to bring on a Amazon marketplace future, and that can lead to a sort of, you know, both positive sentiments in terms of APIs and integration, but also a fear of being commodified. And I think the inspiration that we should look to is actually in China, which is Tmall, so Alibaba. Now, Apple doesn't sell on Amazon Marketplace, but they do sell on Tmall, and they can represent their brand and what is special about an iPhone and other Apple products. And I think that's the model that that airlines, hotels, suppliers should be demanding. You can still have a marketplace, you can still have common search and full content, but that would be my take on that.
Amir, the technology out there that you think is going to, the best technology available out there now that is going to help this industry innovate?
I think just going back to the faster question, I mean, if Uber, when they were starting out, wanted to deal with all the regulation out there, local regulation, Uber wouldn't exist. Not to say I'm comparing the airline industry to a taxi service, but it is a highly regulated industry. It was archaic. You know, the medallions, at least I know in San Francisco for a taxi cab, were north of $500,000. And they did something and then asked for an apology later. And it worked for them. I'm not saying they're out of the water yet, but so far they've been able to at least prove what they put on the table. But as far as, you know, what I saw during the beginning of the second session here, I think going back to open API, I think that could be a transformative initiative for the airline industry. And you know, allowing people to interact with the old legacy systems that the airlines have in various ways. The interest exists, I can guarantee you, from where we're sitting. When we talk to startups that are experts in data analytics, you know, personalizing a certain service based on historical patterns, there's a lot of people who know what they're doing, and they've proven they can actually help out the retailers out there or the banks out there to do a better job of serving their customers. But in the airline industry, we haven't seen that kind of trust, if you will, to share that data with third parties that would ultimately help them out and help out their customers. So out of everything that I saw here today, I would say that open API is a huge step forward from where we're sitting. today.
And I've got to basically wrap it up, but let's end on that, because that's a nice segue. Do you agree, out of what we've seen today?
Yes.
Yep.
Did you need a quick wrap up?
Gareth? In terms of the technology that's out there that can make this industry innovate and faster?
Yeah, bring in more open source principles, software development, and perhaps IATA can play a custodian role against that. It is with NDC, and APIs were discussed earlier, but the more open source principles are brought, the more startup people all around the world will get involved.
I think that what we should do is assemble the top 10 things that travellers most hate about our business and use that as our to-do list. You know, people hate airports for walking distances, for crowding, for queues, and you know, we've got strategies to try and quickly deal with all of those, and most of the strategies are not based around adapting legacy. They're about disrupting, about innovation, finding people in villages in Romania that can help us, you know, all of that stuff. It is not going to be driven from within unless we get these open standards sorted out, and we are genuinely attacking one by one the things that stand in our way between what we're doing today and what would delight the customer for tomorrow.
Right. Last word, just briefly, Christoph, on that.
I think a lot of good stuff is going on, and you wonder why it's not implemented faster. So if you go through it, the customers certainly, they want it. I have never seen resistance from our employees because they use new technology before they come to the office and after they leave the office. I cannot see a large deal of regulatory hindrance there, with exception some border patrol thing, but for the rest, I think we can do what we want, yeah. Technology is available. So what's left is maybe we have some self-inflicted standards. Maybe we make life a little bit too complex ourselves, and maybe the 90% of the complexity we have is for the business case where an unattended miner flies with 2 surfboards and a pet over 3 sectors, changing 3 airlines. You know, whether this 0.5% of our revenue generation is causing 90% of the complexity we are confronted with every day. And that is really what simplification is all about.
Your own worst enemies. Your own worst enemies. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause, please, for our panelists. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Caroline. Thank you.